Hey friends, welcome back. This is Ashley with Uncommon Roots Homestead, and today we are gonna do a garden tour and also a goodbye, farewell to this year's heirloom tomatoes. It's about that time of year. It is early to mid-August here in East Tennessee, Zone 7A, and our tomatoes have seen better days. And so at this point, it's time to take them out. And so we're gonna talk about how we made that decision, how you can make that decision, and show you the rest of the garden. Let's do it. So we have known that this day is coming. All of these tomatoes, they have given us lots of fruit, right? These are actually, believe it or not, the tomatoes that I took care of. I did prune them well. They were not too overgrown for the majority of the season, but disease still happens, especially when you're in a warmer climate. We have a very hot, humid climate here in East Tennessee, and tomatoes just don't thrive when we get into the peak of the heat. And so at that point, lots of different diseases set in. I could go into trying to diagnose these, but at this point, they're past the point of treating. When you get to the point where, 40 to 50% of the plant is dead, it's just better off with annuals to just cut ties. And if you have time in your season to succession plant, go ahead and do that. But at this point, we've gotten enough tomatoes. We've put away a ton of fruit and sauce. We actually still have all of the production tomatoes that went wild, that crazy part of the garden. It's super healthy. I'll show you guys that in a little bit. But I'll show you what these plants look like, and then we're gonna work on harvesting everything here, and then we're gonna rip these out. But first, like I said, I'll walk you through the rest of the garden and kind of give you a hybrid tour before we do that. But first, let me show you these tomatoes. So this is what we're working with here. These are Berry's Crazy Cherry, and you can see there's still a lot of fruit, but by and large, these plants have seen better days. This is probably the worst of the beds. This bed had my Dr. Wychees or Witchees tomatoes, and they just were ravished by disease pretty early, and they just never recovered. Here's the rest of my cherry tomatoes, and you can just see they are sad, dried up. You're not coming back from this. Usually this time of year is bittersweet for me, because as you see things in the garden start to die and stop producing fruit, you think about all the time and effort that you put into these plants to get them to where they were just to watch them die. And a lot of times I get to that point in the year and I think, like, what should I have done differently? What could I have done differently? And then I have to remind myself that these plants gave us so much food, and it's just their time. They're annuals, and by nature, they are not gonna make it all the way through. They're not gonna be around next year. And they're one season crops, and this is the end of their season. And for us in East Tennessee, Zone 7A, we have already been harvesting. We're not in a northern state. We're not just now getting ripe tomatoes and having to rip our plants out. We've been harvesting off of these since late June, mid-June. And so we got a month and a half of produce off of these plants. So it's time. It's time for them to be pulled out. It's time for them to go. And ultimately, it's time for us to prepare these beds for fall planting. So as sad as it is to watch them die and to have to come to terms with the fact that the large part of our tomato season is done, it's also exciting because we get to prep these beds for new growth and new plants, and we're entering a new season, and that is one of my favorite things about living on the farm. Our asparagus is looking wonderful. You can see other signs of death. This is just the August garden here, friends. It is not all wonderful, alive, and vibrant. We've got a lot of dead things. Those are my cucumbers that never took off. Over here, I've got some melons that, again, never took off. This is actually, I think, some kind of a weed here that's growing up the side. This bed is empty. It just needs to be weeded, and then we're going to compost and mulch all of these beds that we empty out today really heavily so that they are ready to rest in some cases and be planted in others. Some things are still going fantastically well, and one of those things is this eggplant. It has hands down been the showstopper. We are getting 3 to 4 full eggplants every day off of this, and like no signs of slowing down. It does have some lacing here, some bug damage, but I mean, it's really healthy overall. Golden oregano needs to be weeded, but look at him, he survived. So for all of you who said you thought he would survive, you were right. This thyme looks beautiful. This is my lime thyme. My other oregano looks good. This bed needs a heavy weeding. These were succession sown peppers. They look really good. The okra is starting to take off. This bed's looking healthy. As I walk around the garden this time of year, it's really easy for me to be like, this bed looks great, this bed looks horrible. This bed was succession sowed, this one was sowed in April. And so I'm trying to not be, quite that, this is great, this is bad, this is great, this is bad. But that's kind of what kind of what the August garden is for us. We've got things that are kind of going dormant, like these strawberries. They need to be heavily weeded, but they're going to be just fine. They'll come back in the early spring and we'll have more fruit. I've got my eucalyptus here. I am super excited about this eucalyptus. So eucalyptus is actually a tree, but it is a perennial, but it's a perennial in zones, I think 10 and above, maybe 9 and above. And obviously here we're in zone 7A. So eucalyptus is not a perennial here, but I started it from seed. It took forever. So I want to do everything I can to try to get this to stay alive until next year. So what we're going to do is actually towards the end of the season, so probably October, I'll dig these up and I'm going to pot them and I'm going to bring them in the house, and we're going to see if we can keep them alive, overwinter them, get them more established as trees, and then bring them in and out of the house every year. What we'll probably do is, rather than the house, maybe do the garage, something where it's easy to bring them in and out, but that's all kind of to be determined. All of my spring kale is looking decent, but pretty ravished by bugs. So what we're going to do with that is pull it out. We'll give this to the pigs, and I'm going to be starting all new kale to get us through the winter. This part of the bed has been empty for a long time, since early spring. My Malabar spinach took off. It looks great, but we aren't huge fans, so I should have thinned it. I didn't. I'm just going to kind of let him go. We'll see. My carrots, these are all ready to be harvested. I've got some pretty flowers. This was just a wildflower mix. My lettuce has gone to seed, but I'm letting it. I'm actually going to collect and resow those seeds. I've got some, again, these were melons that didn't make it. The beans are still looking good. They're starting to come up the side here. And then I've got my bunching onions. So kind of a mix in this bed of good, healthy, alive, going to seed, and needs to be pulled out. So as always, my absolute favorite part of this garden is my herb bed. My herb bed is still looking fantastic. Everything is super healthy and lush. I mean, it is just exploding with life, and that is my favorite. One thing that we've been talking about recently, though, are these nasturtiums. So nasturtiums are fun. They're pretty. They grow pretty rapidly. They climb. They're kind of something that I've always just looked at as like a staple in a garden. But this year they were in the herb bed, and I feel like they just took over, and we don't even really like nasturtiums. We don't really eat them. They just kind of are sitting here. My friend Taylor has come and taken some, so like shout out to Taylor. But other than that, it's like, I don't think they deserve a spot in this herb bed next year. So I am probably going to prevent them from reseeding. I've let them go to seed here, so they're definitely going to come back, but I will pull those up. And I'm going to give that space to something else. I actually was thinking about maybe doing another mint or a different variety of sage. Those all did really well. They're super fragrant, and I just love having them here in the garden. So Kevin just said we should put those on the trellis, which is hilarious because I didn't even start this tour by showing you the naked trellis because, it's still naked and it's still a trellis. So kind of given up on that. And this, we're in mid-August. We're pretty much cemented our place in the naked trellis for the 2021 garden season. I'm going to have to really strategically plan what to put there next year, because at this point, those roses are not doing anything. So that's not going to work. I wanted to show you guys this artichoke. So he looks absolutely wonderful. All three of these do, actually. And they did not fruit this year. So I've read that it's common to not fruit the first year. I think it actually might be a maybe a nitrogen deficiency, something like that. So I am going to hopefully let these overwinter. Hopefully they'll fruit for me next year. But the plants themselves look really healthy, so I'm happy about that. I just harvested all of the dahlias to make an arrangement for my kitchen, so I don't have any, but look at these. These are going to bloom so soon. These pumpkin on a stick eggplant are starting to form, and they are absolutely gorgeous. I'm so excited about them. I don't know if you eat pumpkin on a stick usually, or if you just use it for decoration, but how fun. Our peppers this year look decent. They don't look as wonderful as they have in years past, but this is actually the time of year where we usually see our peppers take off. So we're not writing them off yet. They can still come back and give us a huge harvest. So we are just kind of holding tight. Some of them look great. They look a little thirsty right now, but it actually just rained last night, so they shouldn't be too thirsty. Poblanos look great. The banana peppers look great. We're getting a lot of jalapenos. The Sugar Rush Peach look amazing, which is really good because Kevin's Sugar Rush Peach hot sauce is my absolute favorite. He is going to absolutely, he will make a video on the Sugar Rush Peach hot sauce because it's so good. But other than that, we did have some that like died off here. Like that space is empty now. So I'm just kind of watching. Honestly, peppers, because they're slower at the beginning of the season, tend to get the worst of both worlds with us because we as gardeners, Kevin and myself, are like hyper aware of the garden in spring, right? We're out here all the time. We're taking care of everything. We're watering everything. We nurture them. And then once they start to set fruit, we get into this, like, it's kind of like the seasons of gardening where you're up, down, up, down. And right now we're in the season where like, we're getting so much harvest. The tomatoes are starting to die. We're kind of like entering like the decline of our, not excitement, but it's just a different phase of the garden season. And unfortunately, it's like when the peppers need us the most, we're kind of like, let's just take a little break from this whole garden thing. So we will see. This might not be the best pepper year we've ever had, but we're absolutely going to be able to put away some peppers. And we had such a great year last year. We still have preserved peppers from 2020. So I'm not worried about it. I'm walking right now in our, let's see, there you go, in our potato row. The potatoes are looking pretty good. They're starting to flower. I'm going to wait for them to die back a little, and then we'll start digging them. You guys remember, I got our potatoes in super late, like way later than I should have. So anything we get, I'm going to consider that a win. Okay, guys, so you are aware of our jungle tomatoes here, our production tomatoes that we did not prune and we did not really take care of. Guys, they are the healthiest tomatoes on our homestead right now. They are absolutely thriving. The fruit is healthy. The plants are healthy. I mean, look at this. Do you see this? They're doing so well. It's so counterintuitive because we did not take care of these plants the way we should have. And I mean, you guys remember, I was really kind of like torn up over the fact that we did not take care of our production tomatoes in the way that we should have, in the way that we felt like we were responsible for. And we let them get out of control. And they're being so forgiving, and they are so much healthier than the plants that we took good care of. So I don't know what that means. I wouldn't say that all of a sudden we're just going to decide that with our production tomatoes, we're not going to take care of them. I think we want to take care of them a little better than we did this year. But I mean, they're at least a month behind all of the other plants in terms of like disease setting in. So they're looking really healthy. I mean, I harvested probably 40 pounds of tomatoes off of these 2 beds just yesterday alone. I am not complaining. They look amazing. How gorgeous are these giant sunflowers? So these are giant gray sunflowers, and they are absolutely stunning. I mean, he's got to be 9, maybe 10 feet tall. And those red blood sunflowers are gorgeous too. But I'm over here. These are the sweet potatoes. They are still looking great. I actually was just talking to somebody because we've never grown sweet potatoes in ground before. We've always done containers. And when you're growing sweet potatoes in containers, it's a lot easier to harvest them. We usually just dump the container into a wheelbarrow and call it a day. Well, when your sweet potatoes are in the ground, a little different. So we're looking at different ways to harvest them. I think what we're gonna do is once we pull out all of that summer squash and start to clean up this area, then we'll broad fork and try to rip up all of the sweet potatoes and harvest them. So we'll definitely bring you guys with us when we do that. I am not sure when that's gonna be or how. I read that it should be right before your first frost, so probably later in October. But I'm really excited to see what these plants ended up doing in the ground. Our winter squash has seen better days. We're seeing a little bit of disease in there, but winter squash cures on the vine, so I am going to just let it keep doing its thing, and we'll go through and try to harvest in the next couple of weeks, especially if we start to see more damage. I was just about to go help Kevin get working on harvesting all of those tomatoes and ripping those plants out, and I remembered I didn't even show you guys the coolest part of the garden right now. Look at this. How crazy, right? I mean, these are huge. They're all at least 3 to 4 feet long. I mean, their ends here are like the size of my head. The plants are just super healthy. Very cool. I will absolutely grow these every year. I mean, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I have 12 that are huge and growing. I mean, that's enough squash to get us to next summer. Like, we're a small family. We're not eating that much. I have read that it's a lot like butternut when you let it go to winter squash. So I'm going to let it go to winter squash, and then we will make some soup out of some of it. But I mean, these are, each one is multiple pounds. Like that's probably a 15-pound squash. So we're going to have a lot. Also got some fruit in there. I need to get in there and harvest. This is all got to come out. They're all looking pretty sad back there, those tomato plants. Look at how happy this ginger looks. I mean, it looks amazing. There's got to be a ton of ginger in here. So for the ginger, I am not going to harvest that until the very end of our season because, oh, got a yucky tomato. That'll be perfect for the pigs. Ginger has a long growing season, so I'm gonna wait as long as I can to harvest that. How cool is that passion vine?
Kitten just got out.
Kitten just got out. All right, so now we are going to collect the rest of the fruit. Oh, you've been getting the tomatoes? Perfect. And we're gonna rip all of these beds out and get them ready for fall planting.
Because they're all yucky.
Yep, they all got diseased, huh?
But these ones didn't.
Yep, we'll collect the good fruit.
But we got a yucky tomato.
So let's do it. All right, so now that we've done the majority of the clearing, we are gonna be taking these beds, amending them, getting all of the weeds up, and then covering them up with some good mulch to wait until spring. So once all of that's done, we will be ready to plant for the fall, ready for the spring. We're trying to do as much proactively at the end of this season as we can so that in the spring we're not faced with cleaning up all of the garden beds and like doing all of these other things. So that's why we're putting in the work now. Thank you for joining us today, friends. You always have a space here in our garden. Until next time.